Okay, so I just want to confirm for 100% fact that I was actually proven right the other day when I made a video talking about how if you actually dig into Gen 1's coding, you might find Pokemon from Gen 2 that were supposed to be in Gen 2. And not just up until Pokemon Yellow, but, Red, Blue, and Green as well. And what happened was, okay, if you actually look at these screenshots, mind you, this isn't my video. This goes to the people that actually had made this, hence the information's there, like who uploaded it and their notes. But basically, what they had proven was because I wouldn't really know 100% like how to set this up, so that's kind of why I was browsing it because this is still new to me. But from my understanding, what somebody did was they took the Missingno in Gen 1, whatever one they caught, and then they figured out how to transfer it to Gen 2 because what happened was while in Gen 1 the data still exists. However, though, when it transfers over to Gen 2, it's more complete data and it knows exactly what variables to look for, and therefore it's able to recognize it and it transfers it into that Pokemon. So the other day I made a couple videos talking about, and you can find these lists on the internet. It shows you like directly, really organized, like what the classifications are. So like this glitch Pokemon that's found in this game would be somewhere along the lines of this Pokemon. And so what really has proven was that Gen 2 really was supposed to be one game. And if this is the case, I mean, we already know that Gen 1 and 2 are sequels to each other. This has been known for years, because they made another game and Pokemon, even the original designer came out and stated at one point that, most of the ideas that they have used in the games in some way, shape, or form were not scrapped. They might have changed some designs, but they, for the most part, were used to make a game because, that's what they wanted to do. So, what we really should be asking ourselves right now, what this all means, is how much different was Gen 1 and Gen 2 supposed to be? Because if you think about it, yes, Gen 1 and Gen 2 are two different games that take place in the same region. If you don't know, the Kano is Gen 1 and Johto is Gen 2, and they are still part of Japan. So what this means is if it is possible that Gen 1 was supposed to be entirely just one game, or Gen 2 was supposed to be entirely just one game, how much more content was supposed to be cut out? If Gen 1 and 2 weren't supposed to be sequels, like direct sequels to each other, like besides 3 years, because this is where it gets confusing. Because if you look at the beta of Gen 2, for example, it was supposed to be a much bigger game. Gen 1 we're still debating like the prototype of Gen 1. I mean, you could go back and play like Pokemon Green, for example, and you could see some ideas that were a little bit different. But for the most part, it was still the same, though. It is debatable, like, what if we could get our hands on a prototype of Gen 1, it would be really interesting to see how much stuff they changed and maybe even more content that was scrapped. Maybe later on we could figure out what had happened. Because what's really interesting is, if you don't know this, and this is a little off topic, but this just kind of shows you how far Pokemon goes back. Pokemon was actually supposed to be what was known as Kapu monsters in Japanese, and it actually started. Pokemon, the first game came out was Pokemon Green, Pocket Monsters Green, and this was actually back in 1995, believe it or not. But Pokemon, the copyright, I was actually reading like somewhere along the lines, like even Pokemon like Mew and Pokemon like Rhydon were actually trademarked like by Game Freak back in 1990. So it wouldn't be a good 5 years in that time period before they finally released those games. So Pokemon Gen 1 and Gen 2 are probably the more interesting ones to start off with because not only were they the first games, but it's like you can really see how far they changed the series because they're still trying to like figure out like what they wanted to turn it into. And from the concept arts that we have, like one of my favorites was the one where you see like what Red looked like in the very first beta, where like he's like in the woods holding a flashlight and he's turning around like kind of like looking at the reader, but he's looking away, and then you have Rhydon who's like off to the side, turned on a 90-degree angle, and they're like kind of running around in the woods somewhere, if I got that right, or a cave, and they're just exploring it, like, and it just kind of shows like like the trainer is with their Pokemon and they're like going around having their own adventure and all that. What we know the series to be as, and it's really interesting, like how they turn this into something really It's exciting to talk about, like all these cool findings and all these concept arts that still have yet to be dissolved, and how the series could have evolved. But but what we've proven though with this video though is that the Missingno and the Gen 2 Pokemon were in fact, for the most part, it might have been planned from Gen 1. Maybe Gen 1 really was supposed to be just one game. We know that there was supposed to be 190 Pokemon in Gen 1, but maybe that was just the cutoff date. Maybe if they really could and there was no such thing as a deadline, maybe they would have just made even more of them and put them in. But, even like, so, I forget his name. What was it? Satoshi? I'd have to double check. He, the guy who created Pokemon, even admitted that it took them at least 10,000 hours or 1,000 hours, like just even for the first beta designs, like even before Pokemon really became like it was, all the designs, all the concepts. Like, I mean, he put like a good chunk of time into this before he really realized what he wanted to do, and even then he was still overwhelmed because it's like when you have a series that is your dream to complete, you really never know like what you're gonna run across. It's always that one question. You might have like, you can only do so much with a cartridge space, but at the same time, well, I mean back in the day at least, but it's like, if you think about it though, a lot of people really might have been shocked what they were capable of coming up with when they finally had something that would not only change their life but millions of people's lives as well.